Good evening and welcome to the Cheese Room podcast. We have got a very, very exciting show lined up for you this evening. We're going to be talking about the club's latest financial statement and all that it means for us, obviously, moving forward. And joining me to talk about such exciting, riveting things, we have the Cheese Room's very own accountant, Mr. Steve Diver. How are you, Steve?
I am good. You sound as excited as I normally sound when I talk about things, but don't worry, everybody. It is more exciting than it sounds. I'll try and make it be more exciting at least. But I'm good and happy to be here.
Good, great to have you. Making his Cheese Room debut, we're joined by Ian. How are you, Ian?
Hi, Shan. How are you? Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Looking forward to this. Looking forward to seeing accounts made so exciting. Better than the Manchester City Paris Saint-Germain game. If you can do that, you've done a great job, Stevie.
True that.
I'm sure he'll smash it. I'm sure the PSG City game will be nothing compared to this Cheese Room episode. And to add to that, we have Colin again. How are you, Colin?
I'm well. Thank you again for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. And this one in particular, I'm excited. Never met Stevie before, but I'm excited for this accounting made fun. So
under pressure now.
Yeah, exactly. No, well, hey, I feel like you're the kind of guy that probably works best under pressure. So.
Yeah, I procrastinate a lot at work, so
same.
Yeah, all about working under pressure and a deadline.
I can relate.
Actually, from a boss who might be listening in, I do know procrastination at work. I work hard all the time.
He works ahead. You work ahead of time, I think. Actually,
hell yeah.
I mean, Steve is possibly the most dedicated man to his work that I've ever seen in my life. So, big up, Steve. We know how hard you work in the Cheese Room. Guys, obviously, if you've got any questions as we're going through the show, please do pop them in the comments. Just going to say hello to some people watching. Kerry, one of our channel members. Hello. Yep, I'm sure Steve's got. Is it gin or wine?
A massive glass of wine to last me through.
I was going to say that'd be a lot of gin.
It's quite a long way to your wine cellar, isn't it, Steve? Oh,
you don't have a cellar, sadly.
Some grapes, Ian, this time.
Nice claret, if that's okay.
Good.
Won't drink too much of it, just in case, but just a wee claret on the go.
Colin, what's your poison?
Man, I like white wine, but also whiskey. If I'm going wine though, it's got to be a white wine. But I'm a whiskey man if I'm choosing. But nothing today. Not yet. It's only 3 in the afternoon here, so a little bit too early. But
tomorrow's somewhere, Colin.
Yeah, exactly. And tomorrow's a holiday here, so I'm kind of just prepping because I plan on got to do a lot of family stuff tomorrow. So I'll need to have my liver ready to tolerate all of that.
Definitely.
Sorry, breaking news here. If anyone doesn't want to know the score from the Etihad, better block your ears. But Neymar's just put Paris Saint-Germain 1 up.
Ooh. I heard they hadn't been playing very well, but goals change games. So
goals change games, absolutely.
They definitely do. I mean, anyone that's going to be that everyone will just it's never going to be a secret because everyone in the comments is going to put the score in. Our resident Geordies in the comments. Alan, hello. And obviously Kerry as well. So keep us up to date, guys. Keep us up to date. Right. On to the exciting stuff, Steve. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Are we ready?
Is everyone else ready?
Oh, born ready. Yeah, I'm.
Yeah. Okay. We've got hard-hitting questions here, Steve. First up. Are we going bankrupt? Tell us.
No. You want more on that? So, I've seen a few people over the time, and we'll get into the debt later on. But debt isn't bad. yes, we've made a loss, but clearly that's due to COVID over the last couple of years. We're not going bankrupt. The accounts have been signed off on what you call a going concern basis, which effectively means it's not going to go bankrupt. We are in a perfectly acceptable position as a club financially. Not on a pitch, but we're not going to discuss that tonight.
No, definitely not. This is very much a educational show. So before we delve into the detail, can you tell us how accounts work and what we should look out for in them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep it pretty high level because I could probably talk all day about this, and I don't think anybody wants that, including myself. But yeah, effectively, every limited company in the UK has to file and has to put out accounts to what we call Companies House. So if anybody's interested in what the Tottenham accounts will look like or do look like, you can go to, I think the website is beta.companieshouse.co.uk or whatever, or to gov.uk, and you can find them on there. They're audited, Tottenham are currently audited by Deloitte, very reputable. And the reason I say that is I have seen a few people on Twitter and over the years say, oh yeah, we don't care what the accounts say, they're probably fraudulent, or there's probably loads of errors in there, or the club only put out what they want to put out. Well, they have to put out what the accounting standards say they have to put out, and then the auditors check that, right? The latest ones aren't on there yet. We've only had a snapshot of the information from a club. Last year, I think the accounts went out in December, so they could go out in a week or so, or they could go out any time up to the end of March. When, I couldn't tell you, but sometime between now and the end of March is best bet. What you really need to look out for in the accounts, obviously people, they delve straight into revenue. Revenue people generally understand as a number. People also look at profit. People generally understand profit as a number. However, with a football club, profit's a little bit irrelevant. I'll explain why a little bit later on when it comes to how you account for players, but profit can be a little bit misleading. So for me, the numbers I really look at in the financial statements for club are, absolutely revenue, how we're doing on that. We've tanked due to COVID, no surprise, but also cash flow statement, because cash is king. It's a cheesy, corny statement, but it's very, very true. Cash is king, right? I think I bored Ian already. Always had too much clout. So it's really, really, really important that we look at the cash flow position of a club, and that also feeds into when people talk about, well, we don't spend any money at a club. Where does the money go, etc., etc., etc. Well, you can see where the money goes by looking at cash flow. It's literally cash in, cash out, and it tells you exactly where all the money has gone. Quick one on how you account for players, because I think a lot of people get confused by this, which is perfectly understandable. Let's say dream world situation, we buy a player for 100 million in January. They're on a 5-year contract, let's say. That player would be recognized as what you call an intangible asset in our accounts. So you wouldn't see £100 going against profit in year one as a cost. You'd see them going onto the balance sheet as what you call an intangible. All an intangible really is it's similar to a fixed asset, and we all know what a fixed asset is, a house, a office, or a car, or a machine, or something. But it's less tangible in nature, hence it's an intangible. And then over those 5 years, we'd recognise what you call amortization, and you'll see that come into the accounts. And you recognise that 20 million a year. So you've got £100 million value of the player, 5-year contract, 100 million divided by 5 is 20, so you get 20 million expense each year. Now, why that's important for a few reasons, why it distorts profit, is we could sell Kane for 100 million this year, and we'd get £100 million profit on his sale, because Kane is worth nothing in the Tottenham accounts, zero, which is a bit of an oddity of how football accounting works. We could then spend 200 million on players, but in our accounts in that year, we've made £100 million profit. So all of a sudden, Twitter's enraged because ENIC have made £100 million profit. Well, actually, if you look at the cash flow, we've spent, this isn't quite true, but it's true for this bit of chat, we've spent £100 million more than we've received for the sale of Kane. So it's actually a good thing. So that's a very, very high level kind of overview, but I'm sure we'll go into more detail in a little bit.
Guys, do you have any questions for Stevie on any of that?
So far, so good. I totally anticipate having questions eventually, but at this stage, I'm following right along. So I have like a notebook. I was gonna write questions in if I had any, but still empty.
It's like a lesson at school, isn't it?
It sort of is, but one that I'm actually interested in. It's
Economics
nice.
with Stevie Diver.
I would take that class.
Ian, have you got any?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I think one of the things that came up on Twitter that was interesting is that the operating profit over a year against the overall retained profit and loss in the accounts is something I think confused a number of people, particularly as it seemed to show a surplus over the year, but an increase of the debt by effectively £100 million from just over 700 to just over 800. And I think some people were a little bit confused by that. Steve, that might be something worth explaining, particularly as, I tend to look at bottom lines with accounts and having only sort of owned and managed smaller businesses. And the bottom line is the net debt is now 100 million more than it was 12 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a really good question. So, for example, operating profit comes when we look at a set of financial statements, we talk about going down the income statement. So you start off with your revenue and you end up with your tax, right? And in between, you have all your expenses and other income if you sell players or have interest income, etc., etc. Operating profit is fairly close to the top. So, typically you'd expect a club to make an operating profit. But then underneath that, you'll have your amortizations. Amortization was, the £100 million a player acquisition being amortized 20 million a year. And it will depend on who we bought and when, but typically Spurs, and I think last year that cost was 80 odd million for amortization. You've then got 30 odd million, 35, 36 million, I think, from memory, of interest as well. So that's why you can have an operating profit, and then it will go down to effectively the loss in ordinary activities below. Also should say amortization isn't a cash movement either. We'll come on to that later because people always get worried about that.
Exciting stuff. We've got a question from Cody, and if it's later in the run sheet, Steve, just let me know. But Cody Mack says, how would the club decide on an amount of depreciation of property, plant, and equipment? Mm-hmm. Is this primarily used as a tool to reduce tax obligations?
That's a really good question. So, bearing in mind I'm not a tax accountant, so I'm a financial reporting accountant, and I do technical advice for people. I haven't worked with Tottenham itself, but I'd work for football clubs or for other organisations and large organisations doing transactions and accounting advice for them. And then part of my team would do the tax, right? So I don't necessarily get involved in the tax, but I do know a little. So first of all, how do they decide on the amount of depreciation? Well, you have to estimate what you call the user economic life. So for example, very simple example, you buy a laptop for £3,000. Laptop would have a 3-year life in a normal business. So you'd depreciate that £1,000 a year. Gets a bit more tricky with a football stadium because how long is a football stadium going to last? Outside of North America, typically 40 to 60 years. I can't actually remember how long Tottenham said Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is going to last, but they'll come up with an estimate for the life. The auditors would then check that and see, is it reasonable? So if Tottenham said, the stadium's only going to last 10 years, the auditors would say, it's a little bit short, right? It's probably going to be there for more than a decade. If Tottenham said a stadium's going to last 250 years, it's not the Colosseum, right? It's not going to be around for that long. So kind of somewhere in between, somewhere reasonable. Then in terms of tax, you have two different things going on. So your profit number in your accounts doesn't go directly into your tax return. You have a load of tax adjustments. So my understanding is you'll have what's called a tax base for depreciation, and there's certain rules around the number that can go through your tax return for that. Again, I'm not an expert in the area, but they're not effectively, long story short, they're not able to reduce their tax balance or their tax payable by having a higher depreciation charge. So it'll get stripped out and the allowable amount per HMRC will get put back in. So long story short, for tax, it doesn't matter.
Lovely. So he's just added this. For the record, the depreciation amount for property, plant, equipment this reporting period was 72 million.
Yeah, which feels about right. So I think Tottenham put it in for like 25 years, but they should be splitting an asset up. So maybe the concrete of a stadium, so the stadium core could have a life of 50. The TVs in the stadium could have a life of 5. The gym equipment in a gym could have a life of 10, for example. The lifts might have a life of 5. So it gets quite complex. If I was more prepared, I probably would have looked at this previously, but I didn't, so apologies.
Yeah, I might be a bit ahead. It's 1-1 at the Etihad, by the way. With this point I want to make, but there were reports in the summer that the owners were willing to sell for £3.5 billion or thereabouts. How true that was, we don't know. But given where the club is, I can't see Enid giving up the ghost now, having invested what they've got. I'm looking at the figures, Steve, and the net assets of the club are. 1.34 billion pounds, and against a debt of 800 million pounds. I wonder, by any accounting method, how you would come to a valuation if, for example, Enid were willing sellers of a value of 3.5 billion, given the net assets over the liabilities.
So I am so happy you've asked this question. I'm also a little bit unhappy you've asked the question because, again, this is me going into caveat mode. I'm not a valuation expert, although I do work with some. Football clubs are pretty difficult to value. I think for a start, you'd kind of disregard net assets because, again, Harry Kane isn't on our books as any form of asset. So, Kane, Lloris, most of our top players will be valued at nil by the club for counting purposes.
Steve, can I just add something here before you go on? As I understand it, football player registrations were included in clubs' balance sheets until there was freedom of movement. Where, yes, you could run the value of the player over the course of a 3 or a 4 year contract or whatever, but given that a player can now leave at the end of his contract, whereas before he couldn't. If the club says you're signing on again, you were signing on again, and therefore it was. I think the accountants advised that the player registrations weren't capable of being included on the club balance sheet or the company balance sheet.
Exactly, and I think also it could be very difficult to, in accounting, we have a concept of reliably measure. How do you measure the value of Harry Kane? Well, there's no active market. There's only one Harry Kane. We even sing that ground, right? So there's literally one of him. So you can't base it on what another version of Harry Kane was worth last week, because that's nonsensical. So is he worth 100 million? Is he worth 150? We could probably ask him a chat now, and some people would say 50 million on current form. Some would say 250 million. So it's impossible to value. So that's another reason why the value of kind of existing players isn't in there, because it could just be impossible to reliably estimate. In terms of the value of the club, you wouldn't look at net assets and I've seen him chat people talking about earnings. In many businesses, you'll use like a PE multiple. So you might say, what's the profit times it by a multiple of 10? That's the approximate value of the company, right?
Yeah.
With football clubs, you use, and I think it's called multivariate model, and I think KPMG came up with that, or certainly they back it a lot, and they've done a lot of studies on it. And the multivariate model will bring in, what the profitability of a club is, what their global appeal is, how many fans have they got, what players are playing for them, what assets do they have, what's their stadium like, what's their commercial revenue streams like, and it's pretty complex. Do I think the club are worth $3.5 billion? No. And there's also limited info on that. So is that debt-free category? Is that $3.5 billion including the debt? I very much doubt it. So effectively, I'd be valuing a club at nearly $4.5 billion, which would be crazy. Genuinely speaking, I don't know. I would place it. My best guess is certainly not a valuation expert, would be closer to 2 rather than 3.5. And even that may be a stretch. But again, you could get some very rich person other than Joe Lewis who loves the club, not a Joe doesn't, and they are worth 100 billion, and they say, right, I want Tottenham to win the league. I'm going to buy Spurs for 5 billion next week. So again, it depends on the whims of the individual.
Your mate Joe Lewis loves us, really, don't he, Steve?
He does. I'm reliably informed. He does watch every game from his boat when he's not.
Wait, you're not his accountant? I thought you were his accountant. I'm confused. I've been misinformed. I was told that you were Joe Lewis's accountant.
No. If only. Only. I've met the man once. Yeah, he's very well dressed.
Really?
His suit probably is worth more than me, but
I bet, man, the suit's probably just like hanging on bones right now. I assume he's a very, very, very old guy, isn't he? I don't know.
He is very sprightly. He's 84, but I tell you what, he
right. I guess with all that sprightly. Money helps buy youth, I guess, huh?
Yep. Probably fitter than Ndombele as well.
Oh no, you had to take it there. You get him. But no.
We've got a super chat from Bob Spur. Big up, Bob. Ian, watching you on Shan's channel is like watching your sexy ex on a date with a handsome fella.
I've just seen that. Yeah, my bromance with Bob is now public.
Yeah.
Join the list, man. There's a couple of us. He's polygamous, that Bob.
There's a question there from Kerry Shan, just above Bob's comment, about the account split down and show how much revenue is generated by the TV rights and food. Steve, you might want to pick that up, but I mean, I think the short-term answer is I don't know if they split food, but the accounts I've seen show match day revenue as one and then TV revenues as another. Particularly as a lot of the 1920 revenues were for TV were sort of doubled in these accounts because of the when the games were played from last season. But you might want to pick up on that.
Ian's got it spot on. So they split it out somewhat. So if you look at what you call the notes to the account, so it'll be Note 5, maybe Note 6, something like that, after what we call the primary statement, so the income statement, balance sheet, etc. They will split it out, but it's at a relatively high level. So you're not going to get split out NFL Absolutely not. So that's commercially sensitive. You're not going to get split out food and merchandise and the other stuff. So they do aggregate it. I think from memory, they've got those 4 categories. I'm going to put myself under pressure now. I think was it match day income, commercial? I'm desperately
TV.
trying to remember what the other 2 are. TV, and I'm not cheating. I promise you, prize money.
Oh, prize money.
So commercial match day typically will include food and beverage. Prize money is pretty obvious. It's what we get for playing and winning things. So not great at the moment. TV is TV. Pretty self-explanatory. Commercial is one that normally confuses people. So if you have a look at commercial, typically I'll be sponsorship. NFL will go in there. Any concerts we have will go in there, and those types of things. The other complexity is clubs will sometimes use categories in a slightly different way. So some clubs might call match receipts only ticket sales. Some may include food and beverage, or program sales as well and stuff like that. Others will chuck that all into commercial. So they're not always quite directly comparable.
Nice one, Steve. Kerry, I hope that helped to answer your question. On to the next question. So why do we owe 170 million to other football clubs? And is our level of debt not really high?
So I guess taking them in opposite turn, our level of debt is high. Debt isn't bad. It's particularly of interest rates being particularly low. I think we're paying 2.3% or something like that. That is really low. So it's actually more efficient for the club to take out debt and invest, whether it's in players or stadium or whatnot, than to just sit there and stagnate. We owe 170 million or something like that to other clubs because, and some people may not want to hear this, he's not great at everything, but Daniel Levy is actually very good at running a business and negotiating. So a lot of the players are bought, and we're better doing this than most clubs. We will buy in deferred terms. So very few footballers, if you buy them for 50 million, would you pay 50 million pound the day you buy them. Typically, you'll pay some amount the day you buy them, maybe some amount the next year, some amount the next year. So this will be for, probably in Ndombele, something we think of bought recently, Bergwijn, and the such.
So players like Davinson Sanchez, even though at the time he was our record signing, I'm sure that Ajax, being a club in the position that they're in, were probably okay with accepting maybe a smaller initial payment and then the annual payments or whatnot. So even though it appears, I don't know, you're right. It appears that these are big money signings, but at the time, not so much.
Exactly right. And sometimes, and I'm wondering if this could happen over the next year or so, because we're likely to be, as a British club, more cash rich than the European clubs. We could go in and gazump some of them. So an Italian club may offer 50 million for a player, and we could say we'll offer you 45 million, but we'll pay that money today. Whereas the Italian club who are offering 50 can't afford to pay for 2 years. So obviously I want money in my bank account today rather than 2 years' time. So that's another way why I think, and again we'll get onto this later, why I think we will potentially gazump and make some good transfers over the next year or so. Potentially.
Steve, you keep telling me that profit isn't important for a football club. Can you tell us why?
So, good question. So similar to what I explained above, where we sell Kane for 100 million, and all of a sudden we've made 100 million pound profit, but we spend 200 million on new players. We've still made 100 million pound profit in year one. So we don't have another 100 million to kind of spend. So you need to look at the cash flow statement and really figure out what cash a club has got and what's gone through the club's books in terms of cash movements rather than just profit. And football clubs in particular do have a lot of non-cash movements, like the depreciation, like the amortization. And what we mean by non-cash movements is, the stadium has, ignoring the debt, being paid for, right? The people built the stadium, have been paid. I think they've all been paid. And then, the depreciation charge will go on for the next 25 years. So in 20 years' time, when we have a £70 million depreciation charge, there isn't 70 million of cash going out of the club in that year. There's zero cash going out of clubs. It's all gone out in 2019 when we built the thing.
Kerry has another good question here. Is there anything glaring in the accounts which isn't looking good or where we could improve on? Obviously, COVID hasn't helped.
Again, really good question. I think not really. I'm quite risk averse, so I do think the debt is potentially higher than I would like it a little bit, but it's very manageable. I think we've got 35 million of interest payments a year, and the debt's repayable over the next 25 odd years. So we're not in Barcelona's position where we have a lot of liabilities due over the next year and we're on the brink of bankruptcy. So no, there's nothing really glaring that's worrying me. As I said, risk averse Steve would like the debt to come down a little bit.
I think that one of the things that I've been talking about for a little while is that although the debt is on paper, it's high. I think there's a number of revenue streams that the company, the club, well, I'll call it the company, the club is not tapping into that it can. I mean, one of the things I find fascinating is that the stadium was open in 2019, into 2018. And one would have thought common sense would determine that we would be looking almost instantly at a naming rights deal, maybe at 25 million a year, and we would be 3 years into a 20-year deal now. And we're not. And there's not really been any suggestion that there's been any detailed talks of breaking down. So that's, looking at the way Levy runs the business, and I know a lot of people don't like him, but nobody who knows anything about business thinks he runs anything other than a very tight ship. He hasn't, if you like, thrown away £60 million in revenue without a plan behind it. I'm very much under the view, and there was a story that broke that the NFL are looking at expansion. They're looking at a team to play in Toronto. They're looking at a team to play in London. They were looking at a team as well to play in, or a franchise for San Antonio, which is ironic because I think their basketball team is San Antonio Spurs.
Spurs, yeah.
And there was, if you ever Google Spurs, you might end up with San Antonio rather than Tottenham. But,
for a moment, yeah.
And somewhere else as well. And it strikes me again with the way that the stadium has been built. With it's all very impressive, but the NFL pitch that can come out and just be wheeled out, as I understand it as well, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole of the East Stand side underneath dressing rooms had been built. They built their special dressing rooms to accommodate the 30 or whatever players it is in an NFL squad with their huge armor and coaches and what have you. Levy is a land economist. That in short means that he will know to the square inch the value and cost of every part of that stadium. He hasn't built the largest bar in world football because he wants to make sure everybody gets a pint, or he does. He wants to make sure that he can maximise the revenues. That if you go down and you want a pint, you can instantly get one. Similarly, with the NFL pitch and dressing rooms, he must have worked out what the cost of that, which would have been a significant part of the £1 billion or so that we paid for the stadium, that there must be the distinct possibility of an NFL franchise, and it might have happened by now if it wasn't for COVID. But as I say, I don't think we're doing that for 2 games a year. I think he's doing that for 10 games a year or whatever. And then the revenue streams that come on are completely game changing in terms of 60,000 people coming in for, I don't know how many home games it would be a year with extra teams, but 10 home games a year. Excluding any playoffs or what have you, possibility of hosting Super Bowls, etc. And then a naming rights. When you think about the possibility of a naming rights deal with a stadium that's accommodating, hopefully top level British come European football and gridiron football on alternate weeks, I would think the possibilities are endless. And I'm trying to think of any other reason Levy would not have jumped at the 20 million a year or whatever he might have got, and the 60 million in a COVID era that would have been helpful, unless there is a master plan behind it. And that's where I see the future of the club.
So there's a few things to unpick there, and you made some really good points. So I guess we've got to unpick. We've got the naming rights deal. We've got NFL franchise. We have a stadium design. So stadium design is a really easy one. Yep, you're absolutely right. The East Stand has a home. It's kind of flipped compared to soccer. The East Stand has the home NFL changing rooms. In the West Stand, you got the away changing rooms. It's perfectly set up. The naming rights is I have to be a little bit careful what I say here. The naming rights is a ongoing matter for the club. One of the issues, as I understand it, is firstly, most of the naming right deals that have ever been done have been done in the US, and most of those naming right deals are with local businesses, right?
Yeah.
So if you rattled through all the names in the US, particularly the NFL stadiums are called, they're all the local businesses in that city, in that state. So that complicates it a bit. It's also further complicated because nobody has ever done a naming rights deal for the 2 biggest sports in the world. So
and didn't Levy hire? Sorry to cut you off. I'm so sorry. And I just wanted to ask though, didn't Levy hire someone that had specifically been working with the NFL for naming rights?
Colin, you're reading my mind. Can I come in here? It's actually in the Levy statements that I picked up off the accounts, and it's a guy called Todd Klein, and who's joined as Chief Commercial Officer, and he's come from the NFL franchise Miami Dolphins. And his job, and I quote on this, focused on securing additional partnerships and strategic opportunities for the club. So that's line by line a quote from, and again, that's I think a significant comment. Sorry, anyway, Colin, go on.
No, I thought forever. With like what you're saying, just conjecture on my part, but like with the amount of money put into the stadium for the NFL and to make it a wonderful American football stadium. In all honesty, they wouldn't do that. I wouldn't think either, Ian, for just a couple of games a year. And I'm kind of trailing off and not really sure where I was going, except for that. With the naming rights and everything, yeah, that's something I had never really thought of. But the fact, then putting it together with the fact that this man was hired from an NFL, having previously worked with an NFL franchise, it kind of connects the dots and makes it all seem plausible that might be the future that the club is looking towards.
Yeah. I have no inside track on this at all. No inside track. It's just you try and think strategically and put yourself in the mind of another businessman and how they would have done it and why they've done things. As I say, Levy's no mug. And as a land economist, he would have worked out the costs, revenues and profits of every move he's made on that down to the penny.
100%. And let's not so the rumor, conjecture, whatever, is that the NFL modifications cost around £50 million in terms of stadium build. And that looks an awful lot when, this is my guess, I have no idea how much I make from the NFL. If anybody tells you they do know, they're almost certainly lying, because very few people do know. Like, the rumors I've heard is about $1 million a game, kind of rental fee, and then around $1.5 million from food and beverage, and then some amount of merchandise, who knows what. So it's not a crazy amount of money. But also remember that the club have planning permission to host 16 non-footballing events every year. So the majority of that 50 million went into the pitch, right? The removable pitch, because locker rooms and all the other NFL stuff doesn't really cost that much money. Right. It's really the pitch that costs money. That pitch can be used for the boxing. It can be used for concerts. The club currently have 8 concerts planned for next year, 2 of which have yet to be announced. They're looking to host conferences. They're looking to host more boxing there. Monster trucks at the end of the season was a pre-COVID possibility, but that got canned. Drone racing, esports. So that amount, and absolutely I agree with both of you that the massive carrot of getting a franchise in our stadium is huge, absolutely huge. And that's absolutely gone into the thinking, but let's not also forget there's a huge amount of other commercial opportunities there, and the club are looking to host, like I said, those 8 concerts for 2 NFL games and 4 or 5 other events as well, to get them close to 16 this year, which will recover a lot of the money spent on the stadium for that additional 50 million uplift.
Samari has a super chat here. So the NFL has talked about a possible future London Super Bowl. Surely naming rights would be done to get maximum funds.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I'm going to come to Colin's question, bless him, because he's actually put it in here. Colin, do you want to?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, I don't know really anything about financial fair play at all, and I was just wondering, as a person that deals with things on a higher level than me, just on most everything, maybe you knew more or anything, and could kind of help me understand that a little bit, if you do perhaps understand it. I know that it's not really what we're talking about here, and it's not really but I still kind of think it ties in a bit. When just thinking about the funds and what the club has to spend and how that's figured, and that old chestnut.
So I don't know that much about fair play rules, I must admit. My best understanding of them is I think they go back 3 years. And as one surprise, we were talking as part of the Cheese Room, the podcast group in a WhatsApp chat about Kieran, was it Maguire or McLaughlin? Maguire, I think. He's a very well respected finance professional and academic in football finance. And he said a Tottenham could spend up to 400 million and not break financial fair play rules. I'm not entirely sure that was right. So kind of FYI, those people are retweeting that. So that goes back for 10 years, I think. And I think you can only go back for 3, but I'm not sure. But the very broad concept is they don't want clubs spending more money than they earn. So you're allowed to spend slightly more money than you earn, but only slightly, and they limit the amount of money that clubs can invest into, the owners, sorry, can invest into the teams. Now, there's obviously ways around that. I won't mention any
Sponsorships
names,
and
but
things. Yeah.
One of them may be playing PSG this evening, and there's ways to circumvent those rules, and putting in loans that just happen to never get repaid, and there could be a club in Fulham that's not called Fulham who tend to do that. But that's a very broad kind of rationale behind it.
Cool. Yeah, that does help. I just wondered. I mean, I guess the time. It's unfortunate for Newcastle that their takeover didn't happen before these rules were put in place. But yeah, so from what I understood, it's going to take a couple of years. Like for now, we theoretically could outspend Newcastle and still be within the financial fair play rules.
Well, we can outspend absolutely everyone.
Pretty much.
If we went by those rules, because I think we have like an additional.
That's just crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Although the losses we're having at the moment aren't helping.
Yeah.
For sure, but you also have to think. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, and then that money would go further though because of the losses. I think because everyone else is suffering those same losses, so it would probably sort of balance out in that regard. But interesting.
Yes.
What would you guys do if we
just?
Later. I'm excited to see learning stuff already.
Steve, take us through the announcement from Spurs about the financial results, like from top to bottom.
I will do. So very high level, we've been shafted by COVID because as a club we are very, very, very reliant on our matchday income. And clearly our matchday income has gone down to, was it £2 million, £1.9 million, something like that, because there have been no match days with fans present. So revenue has gone down about 40 million, which actually isn't bad because it's gone down much less than our decrease in matchday income, so it's been kind of balanced out. As I guess the next season, I think, and Swiss Ramble kind of also thinks the same, we should hit around 120 million for gate receipts, matchday income next year. Swiss Ramble, by the way, I'm sure many people know who he is. Look him up on Twitter. Just awesome guy, posts a lot of good, very factual, unbiased information about finances of all the clubs. Very smart cookie, really good to follow on Twitter. So I'd highly recommend giving him a like and a follow. So yeah, thinking about 120 million of gate receipts, which compares very favourably to the other clubs. In fact, I think from memory, I could put us as number one globally in terms of match day income. Commercial revenue and sponsorship, that's kind of gone up and down a little bit because we've had a little bit more sponsorship income, but obviously we haven't had the NFL during COVID. I guess we were talking about this before the pod. I think those 16 events are probably going to bring in between 20 and 40 million a year of additional income to the club, which doesn't necessarily seem like much, but it's an additional player for us to buy each season. Like we said, NFL don't expect it to give us tens and tens of millions of pounds until there is a franchise in the UK. Where do I think we're going to end up this year? One other thing I meant to say. Caller will say every little helps. And that's important because stuff like, hello Shan, I was coming. Take the tours, for example. The tours seem to be, pretty minimal in terms of revenue, right? But if we do a fag packer calculation, 20 tours a day, Tottenham put on, say 10 people on each tour, it's going to go up and down a bit. The ones a weekend are typically sold out. 20 to 30 people. One's 10 a.m. on a Monday, probably nobody. £25 per person on average. That's nearly £2 million a year revenue. So, and then you're buying, people going on Madeira, Skywalk, like Caller did. They're buying their photos, they're buying their shop purchases. You can quite easily get up to 4 or 5 million from revenue just from people coming to the club shop and doing the tours and doing the Skywalk and all of that good stuff. And it all helps the club. Or all should help a club.
You've got one more point there as well, Steve.
I have. So what I expect revenue to be this year, somewhere around 500 million. And when I say this year, sorry, I mean the year ended June 2022.
So it's for this season, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 500 million isn't too shabby, is it? Half a billion in a season.
It's pretty good. I realised why I had to say that because I had to set you up for the next question, didn't I? So you can't really say how does that compare to other clubs if I don't tell you how much it is.
You're doing my job for me. How does that compare to other clubs, Steve?
So pleased you asked me, Shan. We're a slick crew here, Cheese Room. So yeah, pre-COVID, Barcelona were about 700 million. They were the highest earning. United were the top club in the UK, around 600. Sounds like I made these numbers up, doesn't it? Because I'm now going to go down to 500 million and a nice round numbers. We'll be around 500 million, which I think will be slightly behind both City and Liverpool, but will be top 4 in finances, if not in league position.
Well, we've got to be top 4 in something, aren't we?
Put that one in the trophy cabinet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Top 4 most successful in revenue. Ian, Colin, do you have any questions on what Steve's gone over? I know it's a lot, and guys, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the comment.
No, but it has been very informative, and I'm really glad to have been here. Thank you, Steve, for dropping some knowledge on me.
No worries, we're not done yet. There's still some more to go.
More knowledge.
Lots of
Even more knowledge.
Harry, another good question. Is it ever in danger of not being a football stadium, or is it guaranteed the main focus is on the football team? I know this is something that is a big fear of a large majority of our fan base, Steve. So take it away.
So it's a good question. I see it raised a lot. I guess my slightly shady response would be, what does main focus mean? Quite frankly, we'll have 25, 26, 27 home games a year at stadium. I couldn't give a fuck what they do in the other however many days a year it is. They could host ping pong tournaments, and I don't like ping pong for some irrational reason. They could host ping pong every single game, match day isn't on, and I wouldn't really care. Do I think, and where Kerry, I think you're really going with this, do I really think that this football is going to be the main emphasis of a club? I do. I don't have any knowledge for that, but I do, and I do think the other activities a club are undertaking and the stadium's undertaking will support the football rather than the football supporting those other activities.
I mean, the annual report, and it said the same last year, as it says the principal activities of the group continue to be the operation of a professional football club in England, together with related commercial activities and some bits. I'm with Steve. I don't see that changing. I mean, even if there's an NFL London franchise, I see the two as entirely complementary.
Well, and the fact that I'm sure that the football team makes the most money, like simply the fact that that's where most of the revenue I feel like would be coming from. So why would they focus on the other stuff whenever the football is what's bringing them the most cash?
It doesn't make sense. And I mean, I've said till I'm blue in the face that, a football team playing mid-table to 45,000 fans does not justify the level of investment that they've made. I mean, in fact, you can say how wrong it was, but I think Levy hit the panic button when we were down in 14th or whatever place we were, and they sacked Pochettino. I think that was absolute panic button time at the thought, hang on a minute, we've been playing European football and we've been playing Champions League football. We cannot be without that revenue stream, given the levels of expenditure. And we see where we are. I can't see any justification whatsoever of us not being a major, or at least attempting to be a very major player in the world of, I hate to say it, use the word soccer, as opposed to just a London franchise playing 8 or 9 games a year of gridiron football. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't make any business sense at all. And I think if people are looking for the future, I think the future is that the Super League will reinvent itself in some shape or form. There will be a European Super League. It may have 64 clubs rather than the 12 or whatever it was that we're going to be playing in the exclusive franchise that Levy managed to get as an invite to. But ultimately there will be a Super League, and that in itself will generate huge revenues, whether that's a Super League played on a Wednesday night, or, as I rather suspect it might be, the European Super League will be played at the weekend, and domestic football will be played in the week, and away supporters can go and do those 2-day European city breaks to coincide with a home or away football match in the in Europe. Again, I'm speculating, but it's just how I picture it. I think domestic football will still be important, but think of the revenue they can generate with a Super League at the weekend, a midweek football match domestically on a Wednesday night, and maybe the following week an NFL match. Just think of the revenues,
No, so no Champions League in that scenario. Like the Champions League would then there would be no Champions League because the European Super League would kind of take precedent. Or do you think? I know that we obviously wouldn't be in both because of the problems that was it UEFA, FIFA? UEFA had with the forming of the Super League. But yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting to think about that timeline you just, that I hadn't really thought of that far out. But
as I say, I'm purely.
It does look an inevitability, and you know what? I'm gonna get slated for saying this, but like the fact that we managed to get ourselves on that list is kind of insane in and of itself. Like, I'm not praising. I think it was a situation where if you're told, like, if you hear someone, you get a whisper like, "Hey, there's going to be this European Super League. It's gonna make so much money for the clubs that are involved," and then you hear that you could get in. I don't know. I just think that what else could. That's a really tough one, and I'm not saying that's for sure my stance. That there was no other choice but to. But I see how an argument could be made.
Join or be left behind.
Yeah, and and like I said, I really hesitate to make like hard stances on things that I don't really know enough about, but I could see that point. Levy's not one to. He's like you said, running a very good business. He knows that we're not the top earning clubs, and if there's a whole bunch of money on the table, why not? I don't know. Why not do everything you can to be part of that? So.
Steve, obviously we were talking about Liverpool and revenues and stuff. Why are we, obviously Liverpool have been a bigger club than us for much longer, but why are we below them in revenue?
Great question. Before I answer it, can you get up Wink 1980's comment about the cheese room?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, good comment, funny comment. There was never going to be a cheese room. There was. I can't believe other people haven't picked up on this. There was going to be a barber. So in the south stand, just a little bit further around from the tap room, the Beavertown Tap Room, they're going to build a barbershop. I've absolutely no idea who dreamt that idea up, because who the hell goes to a football game to have the haircut is just beyond me. But in the original stadium plans, there was a barbershop built in there. Maybe we know
What do you reckon? What do you reckon a
such a shiny
haircut in
head.
there would cost you?
Probably more than I can afford.
Yeah, me too.
Knowing the club. But why are we below Liverpool in revenue? Well, I guess I'm probably being risk averse as an accountant. We may surpass them. It really depends on what happens with Liverpool in the Champions League and us in the Europa Conference thing that we don't really like to talk about anymore, and how much revenue and what agreements we've actually got with the concerts, etc. we have. But and people may not like this, so please don't swear at me in the chat. We are not as big a club as Liverpool, so Liverpool will absolutely dominate us in terms of sponsorship and other commercial income, because you travel the globe and you go to any city in the world and you will absolutely see Liverpool shirts and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Liverpool fans. You go to places in the world and you will see Spurs fans there, but just not as many. So we're not on the same level as Liverpool. We're not on the same level as Man United. We're just not, unfortunately. So that is why the match day income in the stadium is so important for us, because we just cannot compete against the big clubs. Let's park owner investment for a second. Without owner investment, we just can't compete with the big clubs.
So you said, Steve, I just want to say, you said not to swear at you in the chat, and I want you to take note that I did swear at you in the chat.
You literally did. You literally did.
I literally did. Sorry, man.
To be fair, it's the nicest thing anybody said to me all day, so that's fine.
You've got to remember, Steve is in it. I said that you were the best guy ever.
Yeah, and now he's saying that Spurs aren't a big club. I'm just kidding. I'm totally joking.
As big a club.
I know, and it's the truth. You're not telling any lies here.
Sadly, it's true.
Yeah,
And Steve is in a group chat with all of us, and to be fair, the main person that gets abused in that is Caller, as everyone could imagine. Of course,
he deserves it.
But there's a fair amount of abuse that goes on in there. So, what about match day revenue? Why is it important?
So so similar to what I was saying, we basically can't compete with the other large clubs in terms of sponsorship. I know Man United's recent deal was less, but their Chevrolet sponsorship was 75 million a year or something, absolutely insane. We're at 35 or 40, I think. So without that uplift in matchday revenue, there's no way we could just equalise the amount of revenue the club earns. And the amount of revenue the club earns in our situation, as Enoch have set us up, is then directly linked to the amount of money we can invest back into the football club. So that's why it's important.
So Levy and Lewis will be really happy.
They will be delighted, and they'll be so delighted that we're making a huge amount of money. But we should all be happy, because at the end of the day, the more money the club makes, and this is an important point to add, Enoch do not take dividends out of the club. They took, I think, one interim dividend when they first acquired the club, but that had already been declared, and there's £500,000 or something. So it's to any of us a good amount of money, but out of the club is peanuts. They don't take money out of the club, so they don't invest, but they don't take either. So they get their return from the growth and the value of the football club. And
so in theory, they don't make anything until they choose to sell.
Exactly right. And a lot of the growth and the value of the football club will come from on the field activities, because ENIC have realistically backed themselves into a corner now. We are not a Newcastle. We are not a lower. Newcastle are a huge club, but they're underperforming. We're not a underperforming club with a strong fan base and relatively poor facilities and a poor squad that you can buy for cheap, invest a little bit of money, and massively boost up a league and get your return that way. Tottenham will be an expensive club to buy. So the only way to make it a more attractive proposition is to invest properly in the pitch and to make them a top club, both financially and for footballing purposes, which is what we all care about at the end of the day. Even as an accountant, I couldn't give two shits about my revenue unless it goes back into the club, right? That's my key focus. So that's why I think a club are going to invest.
Colin, go.
No, I was gonna say this is good. This is I like your style. This whole show sort of is making a lot of sense to me right now. Like, obviously the club wants to grow the brand. I think what you're kind of getting at is that what the fans want and what the club wants are kind of similar things. Like even if maybe for not the same reasons. So like we need our brand to grow, or they want the brand to grow. Well, we've got to become more successful. I mean, footballing wise, you've shown us that we have, the training facility, the numbers are all pretty, but the one thing that we don't have is that appeal, that recognition, that like global, and that's only going to come from, success on the pitch. And so what you're saying, I think, is that you're hopeful of some future investment of these massive profits we're making.
Absolutely.
This is a really good question as well. Does Steve consider Spurs to be amongst one of the best run clubs in the world? I understand debt is useful, but has the amount of debt taken on put us in a precarious situation long term, not able to borrow?
Good question. And thought-provoking question. So, yes, I'd say absolutely we are one of the best run clubs in the world. Sorry, Colin.
No, sorry. I don't know. Go ahead.
Cool. No, it's nice. So yeah, absolutely think we are one of the best run clubs in the world in terms of being run as a company. I think, and to give some clarity before people say I'm crazy, Enikin or Levy Lover, on the footballing side, no, that's fundamentally not true. We've invested terribly at times, and we've invested far too late in the squad. But as a business, I do think we are one of the best run clubs in the world. And I think given COVID, as much as it has screwed us over the last couple of years, I think we'll actually be in a very strong position to bounce back very quickly. And the club think that too. Debt is useful. Is the amount of debt? Has it put us in a precarious long-term situation? No. So I can see why people would think that. Cody Mack, I can certainly see why you think that. We're not going to go and take a loan from a bank or issue a bond to go and buy players because realistically people aren't going to sign off on that. It'd need to be linked to a more reliable asset than going and buying an Ndombele or the Chelsea. Sorry, I'm momentarily distracted there. So I don't think it's going to put us in a precarious position. We've got 25 years of debt to pay off. Well, that's being paid off over 25 years. So no. Do I think we could borrow a huge amount more? Probably not. But I don't think we'd need to borrow a huge amount more. Touching a huge amount of wood right now on my desk that another COVID doesn't come along. We don't have COVID 22 or another huge lockdown that locks down British sport. But even so, I think we'd be fine to keep going.
Do you think that? Oh, sorry, I keep cutting people off.
Ian, I just want to get Ian's opinion on this because I know this is something he feels he's got quite a strong opinion on. So
Yeah, well, no, that's fair. Although I think it probably is one more for the accountants than people like me who work on sort of more raw emotion and working that through from what we see. I think we are one of the best run clubs in the world, and when you see what's going on in the football market, and in particular what's happening in Spain and what's happening in Italy, where none of the big clubs in those countries have really got any money. And I think with, interestingly, having an Italian manager and an Italian director of football, I can see us looking for some really, really good deals from players for players this coming winter. I think this winter might be a very different transfer window to others, simply because a number of clubs, I think, will be looking to generate money from player sales, particularly players coming into certainly in the last 6 months of their contracts, but even into the last 18 months of their contract, and clubs will be looking to generate some fees to help their cash flows, because I imagine some of the cash flows for the Juves and the Milan clubs, Barcelona in particular, are seriously in peril. And in any business, cash is absolutely king, and particularly at a time like now, the clubs, the companies that have done best in COVID, out of COVID, were the companies that were cash rich at the time the pandemic hit. I don't see the debt as being any sort of problem at all. I know it sounds like an absolutely huge number, but as I say, with the way I see it, with the revenue streams coming back from match day revenues, which are going to top 100 million. Interestingly, the one thing that came out of the was in the accounts as well, was that despite the fact that there's been no football, no live audiences, no television football for a while, that the commercial income, sponsorship and what have you, actually increased. No, I think the future is relatively bright. And as I say, this is one blip. Pandemics like this come along about once every 100 years, so one would hope that we are over the worst of this. Although it's taken longer, I think, than a lot of people expected. We've still got people in stadia. We've still got football being played, and I think the revenue streams that are ongoing at the moment are there, and that's without any NFL football or naming rights or anything else. So, yeah.
Colin?
Oh, I was just going to point out that I think that while our owner, Joe Lewis, doesn't put a lot of or any of his own money into the club, I think that somebody that has the resources and the amount of money that he has and is worth as much as he is would probably get us access maybe to loans at like a lower interest rate or something. There has to be benefit. You know what I mean? He has to having the assets that he does, I think would definitely would help in the process of getting a loan if we needed one, or do you agree with that? Is that like does that make sense or no?
Yeah, it certainly helps. I'm sure it lowers the credit rating. Joe has a lot of contacts in the US, and that's where Hotspur Sam's raised a really good point there. There's a private placement in the US market where he did the bonds through. So I'm sure he knows intimately the people who have invested in the club. And quite frankly, I don't know this, but my gut feel is he's not going to let the club go bankrupt. So if there were another COVID and cash was an issue, then I think he would prop the club up. In terms of the Trauger group, I suspect not, because in the account I don't know, and there are ways of kind of getting around it, but in the accounts you have what's called a related parties note, normally right at the back of the accounts, and that will split out all the related party transactions. And I suspect if Joe, via one of his other vehicles, had taken on our bonds, then that would be disclosed in the back of the accounts, and it's not. So it's a really good question. I don't think it is through him, but honestly, I don't know.
Very good answers, Steve. How do we know that revenue is invested back in the club?
Aha, you made blunder 101. When I normally see rage on Twitter, in all the Facebook groups, when people say, "Oh, the revenue's not going to get invested back into the club." Well, the revenue's not. The profit might. And what people need to kind of calm themselves down on a little bit is, if we make £40 million revenue from the events we host this year, let's say, in commercial revenue, well, that's not £40 million profit, because we would have costs associated, all those stewards, security, etc., the lights, and whatever else, the burgers they're selling, obviously they have to be bought. There's a cost there. So it's too complicated for me to work out, probably ever, quite frankly, certainly on the fly. But there is a cost there. But will we be able to tell if the profit is reinvested back into the club? Absolutely. So the accounts are pretty closed loop, right? You can see if money goes out of the club to the owners. That's called a dividend. So we can see very clearly in the notes of the accounts that there are no dividends, and we can check that every year very clearly. We can then look at the cash flow statement, and we've spoken about this before. And Gov in the chat, who always makes some good comments, was talking about cash flows earlier. Just look at the cash flows, so we can see the cash coming in, the operating cash flows coming in, and where the money goes out. And if we can see that money going out against player acquisitions, then it's being invested into the club. If the money is paying off the debt and nothing else, or being paid out as dividends, then the money isn't going into the club. It'll be as simple as that.
Looking at the accounts again, I can't remember the last time the dividend was paid out. It's a number of years.
I think
2001. Well,
647k from memory.
Yeah, so which is hardly suggests that the directors or the owners are fleecing the club. Taking big salaries, fair dues, but they're not fleecing the club by taking the profit out in dividends, which they'd be entitled to do, under company law. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but they'd be absolutely entitled to take every penny of profit out in dividends. But they've not come close to doing that. No. Hotspur Sam made a couple of interesting points. So if I can maybe just go up the Shan, without taking over your show.
To get some more wine.
There was one. I mean, the about the interest rates. Stevie, our debt is 1013, Shan, if it helps you. Stevie, our debt is at low interest, is arranged through notes via private buyers. Could this be Joe Lewis's Trafalgar Group in disguise? I mean, you can answer. Steve's gone, but I mean, I don't know that. But I think the important thing, and I think Steve raised it earlier, was that I think we're paying something like 2.37 or thereabout percentage in interest. It's virtually nothing. And if you could get your mortgage for that, you'd put another 100k on your mortgage instantly, because it's such a low rate of interest.
Yeah.
And I think, did Steve say that the repayments, the interest repayments are something like £37 million a year? I mean, given the turnover of the club, it's actually a trifling amount, given the high level of the debt. But the potential, it's a very, very low level of debt. And as he said, you owe the bank £1,000, you can't pay, you've got a problem. You owe the bank £100 million and can't pay, the bank has a problem. I think that's absolutely fair comment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously talking about Levy and high wages as well, actually, when I read the statement, it looks like he's actually paid himself less this season than he did the season before. Isn't that right, Steve?
I mean, it is, but let's not crack out the world's smallest violin. He's still probably going to be a second highest paid.
A fair whack, but he's paid. He's seen that we're not doing as well, and he has. lowered
Yeah,
his rate a little bit.
exactly, and it's like quite frankly, I couldn't care whether it's 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. It's going to make no odds to the amount of money we spend as a club. They're big numbers to me, but to a football club that hopefully next year is going to be earning 500 million revenue, it's almost lost in the roundings. It's pretty irrelevant.
Steve, you've put some really triggering questions in here, haven't you? Isn't the stadium just a multi-venue entertainment centre that ENIC will make money out of?
According to Twitter, yeah. According to people who are, well, we're all biased in our own ways, but according to people who are maybe a little bit less biased, no. I mean, I've heard a stadium called a shopping centre. I've heard a stadium be called a tourist attraction. I'm not quite sure why that's a bad thing. Or multi-venue entertainment centre. These are all good things. We want people to go to the stadium and spend money. You don't have to spend your money there, but we want others to go and spend it. So as I said before, given ENIC aren't taking dividends, well, the more money it's spent in the stadium, the more events, so the more the club is worth. So the more money ENIC will make when they sell. But also the more money will go back into the club, forced to buy, hopefully, better players and invest into the team. So it is a multi-venue entertainment centre, but it is not just a multi-venue entertainment centre. It is hopefully our way back into football greatness.
Some of the comments that I see, obviously, the only way you can get Levy out is to stop spending your money. Stop going in the club shop and stop going to the stadium. Do you think this would actually work?
I mean,
because obviously if they're not taking money out of the club, it doesn't make any difference. We're just sort of hindering our own progression if we do that, surely.
Would it work? Yes. I am sure that ENIC would sell the club if nobody went to a Tottenham game until they sold, nobody bought any Tottenham merchandise, and the value of the club would plummet, and the club would be in deep financial difficulty and would potentially go bankrupt. So well done. Do I think it's even an option on the table? No, of course not. I mean, the people protest, and I absolutely understand there are criticisms of ENIC and Levy, absolutely not perfect. And we could probably spend hours talking about those. We won't. But there are absolutely criticisms, and they have made failures in their running as a club, because nobody's perfect. But given that 7 or 8 people turn up to the protests, do we really think that's suddenly going to go to 62,500 people not turning up to the football games? No. So yes, if people didn't turn up and nobody turned up, yeah, the club is done, and ENIC would probably have to sell, but it's never going to happen.
Cheers, Cody.
Cool. Thank you, Cody. Good questions, my friend.
Absolutely. Cody's a smart guy. He's always
Cody,
very
more input. It's been good. It's been good.
Yeah, I've been on shows with him. Top man.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. This is a good question from one of our channel members. Stevie, how does the football pyramid review affect Spurs, or does it at all? Do you know anything about this? I don't.
Very little. Very little, I'm afraid. It's certainly one question I couldn't answer.
Okay. We'll have a look into it.
Sorry.
We'll have a look into it, and we'll come back to you on maybe Friday's show. We'll have a look.
Yeah, let's park it, and we'll come back to it as a team.
Definitely.
Also, I should say, actually, one thing we haven't got on the run sheet, and I've seen a lot of anger about this. Tottenham are leasing, or ENIC are leasing, rather, club, A golf course. Does that mean Bale is coming back? Probably not linked, although he
Isn't
might
this for
be.
for the women's training centre?
Thank you, Shan. Absolutely, it is. So, yes, it's for a few different things. I can't remember what council own it now, Enfield or whatever, are basically bankrupting themselves for it. I don't quite know why, because a lot of people play golf during COVID, but it's been run, I'd say, relatively poorly. So Spurs are going to turn it into a bit more of a park for the local community. That's awesome. But they're also going to turn it into the ladies training centre of excellence, which, quite frankly, I think is bloody fantastic. I went to the Tottenham women's versus Man United women's game. It was entertaining. And at the time, we hadn't been entertained by the men's team for a while. So I'm well behind a women's game, and I encourage everybody to go out there to watch it. It's a good day out. But for those who are enraged about us, buying a golf course because Levy wants to play golf, whatever, nothing of a sort. It's purely for the local community and also investment into.
But he could use
sport.
it if he wanted to.
Probably, yeah. I mean, to be fair, he owns a club. He could probably set up a pitch and putt on the Spurs pitch, right? But
maybe
I'm not
that
sure.
That would be interesting to see. I would actually love to see that.
End of season. Put it forward to the club.
Do you reckon he's done a round of golf with Harry Kane?
Yes, and put out like a counter video though to the Gary Neville one.
Daniel Levy would be there with his golf club about to swing one, saying, "Back when I was 16, I wanted to not go to college, but I made the decision to go. But for you, I'd make the decision to stay because that's what's best." Something ridiculous like that, but he has form for it.
Yeah,
he does indeed.
Oh man.
But so there's one thing that I've seen a lot of people question on Twitter, and that's that Levy said we spent 400 million on players since April 2019. Surely that's not quite correct.
This is a horrid question, isn't it? I
so
don't know.
What's that figure in? Like what is it? Pounds, euros,
Pounds,
dollars? I mean pounds.
Yeah, 400 million pounds sterling.
I mean, I've seen that banded about.
High.
Sorry, Colin. You carry on. Sorry, I've interrupted you. Carry on.
All I was saying is that just seems that seems higher than what I would think that we've spent.
I've not seen wages? I've not seen that in the annual accounts. I've seen that figure banded about.
It's in Daniel Levy's statement. He says we've sent nearly 400 million on players.
Oh, well, that were nearly that qualifier there. Yeah, that kind of change.
Rounding up potentially. I think Gov may have made a good point about it, including wages. I don't really know, but if you add up what we have actually spent, so we spent 60 million this year, 100 million ish year before, and a whopping 134 million in 2019. Now that's cash outflow. Sorry, that's not cash outflows. That's player acquisitions. So it comes to around 294 million. This is from, I think it's transfermarket.com or whatever the website is. So I'm sure people in chat can go to different website and get a slightly different figure because not always transfer fees are properly disclosed. So that's almost 100 million off, right?
Yeah.
I suspect what he's doing is he's also including the agent fees in there. Now agents quite often will take about 10% of the fee, anywhere 10%, sometimes more. Some of the super agents will take more. So that's straight away another 30 million to add on. There's also a lot of confusion. I don't know the right answer on this about whether Romero is a loan with an option to buy.
He's an obligation.
a loan or an obligation. And I've seen very credible people say both sides of the argument or both sides of the view on that. So if you add Romero in, we're at 370 million, including agents' fees. And hey, that's cracking on to be 400 million. You know, like Gov says, you add in the wages and the bonuses and all the other good stuff, and you're probably over 400 million. Well, you're probably comfortably over 400 million.
Yeah, Romero has signed a 6-year deal as announced by the club. So I think it's a deal that was structured very similar to Giovanni Lo Celso's, where the deal will be made permanent in January. It's just because Atalanta couldn't, because you can't transfer the same player in one window. So obviously they've had to buy the player from Juve, and then he's come to us. So then we can't make it a permanent deal until January. That's my understanding of it anyway.
Same here, but the only thing I genuinely don't know is just a question to the rest of the podders and anybody in chat if they know. How did we buy Emerson Royale? Because Barcelona, you know, did the buyout option, and then a week later he came to us. So maybe there's something in the nuance there. I don't really know, but yeah. So if somebody knows in the chat, let us know. Yeah. So I don't think we
that
do.
400 million as well. He might have included like the paying off of contracts of players like Aurier. I don't know how many others there might have been in that category, but I mean certainly there was I think in the summer, I was surprised that Sissoko went for something like 3 million and stuff like that. There was certainly getting some wages off the books and some players that weren't going to feature even under Nuno, and certainly I couldn't see either of them featuring under Conte.
Actually, here's an hopefully interesting fact, which must be horribly damaging to ego as a footballer. So if we take the £100 million player who we buy over a 5-year contract, they're on the books at 100 million. If they're really shit and if they don't work out, you can do what's called an impairment. So you lower the value of that player on your books. I can't remember. I think it was Luke Shaw a few years ago. Man United in their annual report had to write down, we've impaired the following assets. Luke Shaw have X million, written them off. So can you imagine if you're a professional footballer and you get signed as a big money signing, and then you look at the financial statements, the bloody accounts, and some accountant has decided to write your value off and say you're shit? It must be absolutely humiliating.
I'm surprised that's not happened with Ndombele and Gio, you know.
Well, we have got some impairments going through, but they're not fully disclosed, so who knows? I think David Harris and somebody else saw Hot Spurious may have answered the question.
Oh, so they already owned. So, yeah, I think he was at Betis on loan, wasn't he?
I think so.
Or something like that. So that does absolutely
something weird
sense. Colin, I know you've got to go.
I'm sorry about that. Yep, I gotta head out, unfortunately. But it's been great, and I definitely plan to come back and check out the ending. I'm leaving here with more knowledge than I came with, and that's I didn't even have classes today. It's canceled because it's a holiday tomorrow in the U.S. If you didn't know, but Shan, and thank you as always for having me on. And Steve, thanks for, like I said, dropping some knowledge on me, man.
Well, thank you, Colin, and I must say too,
cheers, Colin.
Happy Thanksgiving, friend.
The knowledge of the cheese people, as my mum calls them. So
cheese people. I'm an official cheese person now, so thank you.
You'll be a turkey person tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. Anything, turkey, mashed potatoes.
Oh, green beans.
It's gonna
miss Thanksgiving.
And on that,
there we go. So Dave has come out of nowhere and is just literally just abusing everyone. Where is it?
To be fair,
20k a week, not a great investment.
Can't argue with that.
Owes us money.
Can't argue with that.
It's very true, to be fair.
So what I
mean-
should say. So go on, Ian.
No, go on. Well, I mean, what I was gonna say, and this is part of the issue with football. I mean, one of the things that, and I think Levy's commented that statement. I've just found that quote, by the way, Shan. So I've read it. Is one of his complaints, I think, quite rightly, is we haven't had value for money from the investments. I mean, those that complain about the investments or the lack of investment, when you look at the money we've spent, hasn't been that bad. All right, you can say relative to other clubs, it's not been as good as it might be, but the reality is our recruitment has been shambolic, has been utterly shambolic, and. They built the academy, and we've got a number of good players coming through. We've seen some of them. Particularly at Marine last year, a couple of lads are now out on loan. We know the boy Scarlett, isn't it? Dane Scarlett is going to be a good player. Even Conte was saying things about him, but he's still only 17 or 18. He's still got an awful lot to learn before he's a first team player. So, and this is what you hope with a new director of football with Conte, is that when we spend money, that we spend it better than we have. You can look at Grealish, and that was an opportunity lost, that we didn't go the extra mile and get Skriniar, that we didn't go the extra mile and get Fernandez. But the bottom line is the player.
Fernandez, just not the right one.
Well, what you mean? Yeah, well, I was at the Norwich Cup tie. That penalty almost didn't reach the goal line, you know. But we did get the wrong one, and there's been too many examples of that. And while some of it might be looking to have got, the cheaper option, it's not all down to that. It's down to, I'm sure, down to some of the recommendations that were made as to who were going to be, the budding great players. And Ndombele 60 odd million. I mean, what frightened me about Ndombele was I read a quote days after from Emmanuel Petit saying, "Well, I'm surprised at that. His reputation in France is not that good," or words to that effect, and that bothered me. And I think I can understand, having seen him play, that wasn't the best use of £60 million. He's got an immense amount of talent. But say in business, you can't teach attitude, and I think that he's one of those players that will bloom. He will have the odd great game. You'll see the odd great flash, but is he going to do it for 40 games a season? No way. Unfortunately, Lo Celso, does great things for Argentina, but he's not done it. That's £100 million of investment. That's £100 million that's not been well spent. And I'm really hoping that as we go forward, and particularly as I think everything suggests that Levy is going to invest some serious money now in the squad to get the football team to where he needs to get it. Money has to be spent better than it's been spent in recent years.
You lead me on to my next question, which is for both of you. So I'm going to come to you, Ian, first, because Steve has spoken a lot.
I want to go off and get some cheese sitters where the cheese room to keep me going to wash my wine down with. But go on. I'm all ears for a bit.
How much do you think we need to? So not how much do you think we can spend? How much do you think we need to spend in January, and on whom to compete for the Champions League places?
I wouldn't care to put a figure on it, because I don't know what Conte thinks he needs to spend. Everybody keeps talking about the defence, but I don't think we've got enough up front. I think we've got Kane, we've got Son, and we've got Mura. Son, we haven't got anybody that can deputise for Son. We haven't got anybody that can deputise for Kane. Bergwijn, that's another one at 27 million. Not sure he's the greatest investment. Gil is still, very, very young. A lot of money. We gave them Lamela and 30 million quid or something. I'm not sure he's quite ready yet either. And that's the area I think that we need to spend some money on. There was a Castles, can't remember his first name, on Twitter saying Conte wants 2 defenders. Well, we've actually got a fair number of centre halves. We've got Dyer, we've got Sanchez, we've got Romero, we've got Davis, we've got Rodon, who I don't think, and Tanganga. So we're not short in that area. I may have forgotten one as well. We need at least one. We need a creative midfield player as well.
I'd say CAM and striker are our 2 priorities in January.
Yeah. Jack Clark. Yeah, another great investment. Yeah.
We love Jack Clark in the team room.
Yeah. What was that quote? He doesn't want to go out on loan because he wants to fight for his place. I mean, like, what place? Be interesting what team he plays tomorrow. I know you'll no doubt come on to tomorrow's game, Shan, but it'd be interesting who he plays tomorrow. Because Bergwijn hasn't even travelled, and I don't gather he's injured. So that would suggest
he's ill, though, isn't he?
Yeah, apparently it's illness.
I think he's ill.
Oh, is he? Okay, too much training. Yeah, and
too much lasagna.
Markande. I mean, that's another one that you do. I agree with you, Gov. That he gets a chance. I've not seen him in the flesh. I've not seen him play, but what you read about him and his stats are good. But I mean, Davis and Dyer, for example, since Conte's been there, have played pretty well. I've actually been impressed with Davis. That left side, where we've not had a left-sided central defender, and that's where he plays for Wales. And I think he's looked a lot more comfortable in the last 3 games than he probably has in the last 2 seasons at Spurs. Dyer, from what everybody says, has got real leadership qualities out there. I don't think you really pick that up. Well, I'm just going to say I don't see the defence as being the main area we need to strengthen, but that's why the coaches get paid the big money at the end of the day. I don't think
the defensive, considering we've been awful this season, I don't think the defence have been the worst part of that.
Far from it. Yeah. Sorry, I've just got distracted there, but just because we're back onto the finances. But Alan Thompson, like the Glaziers have done at Man United, are ripping the club off with the dividends they take. I mean, I know we're back into the financials, but I mean, they bought the club with the club's money. I mean, Steve will understand the financial mechanics of that, but they effectively borrowed off the assets of the club in order to finance the purchase of the club from the previous owners. It's people complain about our owners, but by God, that was seriously, to use a legal term, taking the piss.
This is it, isn't it? We can complain about our ownership as much as we want, but there's far worse out there, and that's what concerns me. If Levy and Enoch were to go, who comes in?
Well,
could be bad, it could be worse.
Exactly. It could be like the Glaziers, especially if you get an American owner, they're not really going to care. Yeah. But anyway, Steve, how much do you think we need to spend?
Probably around 100, isn't it? So I always pronounce his name wrong. Vlahovic, however you pronounce it.
Right.
Striker. We need a striker. That's going to be 60.
Yeah.
And then I've seen there's been a lot of news just on Twitter, so who knows whether it's right or wrong, on I've forgotten his name. Who's the Italian kid who got injured last season? We're linked to Playmaker 22. Seem to know everything about him other than his bloody name. Somebody in the chat may know, so if you know, remind us. But we're linked to an Italian playmaker who's decent. 22-year-old, like, hasn't done great due to injury, but not Kessie, David.
No, Kessie,
it'll come to me. I'll have a look at it later. But him or another attacking creative midfielder. I think I do
Well, we were
think
looking at Damsgaard, weren't we? The Danish international that scored that free kick against us in the Euros.
I'm not sure how serious that was in truth. And then centre back, I can see a longer term need, but I don't think it's the biggest priority at the moment.
I think we could get to the summer without another centre back.
Yeah. Although, and Kerry, apologies, I'm going to touch my wood again. I think if Romero is injured long term, then it may change who the club needs to buy in January. If he's not, then I think it's an attacking midfielder and a striker.
We're heavily linked with De Ligt as well, aren't we?
I mean,
and there's another one with a similar name as well that we've been linked with. Yeah, typical. Yeah,
HG is cringing at our pronunciation right now, no doubt. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Does anyone know how De Ligt has played at Juve? I mean, certainly when we played him against Ajax in that Champions League season, I mean, he absolutely looked like he was the next superstar of.
He has been a big part of that defence.
But not this season. Not this season,
but last.
He hasn't started much this season. And Henry Lee coming into the rescue. Yep, Zaniolo, that's a chappie. Thank you, Henry.
De Vries, King Hoddle, That's what you said, isn't it, Shan, as well?
Yeah, De Vries, he's a left-footed centre back.
Yeah.
I think Garver's made the best comment tonight.
I don't like this Winks slander. I thought he was okay.
He's never been okay, Shan.
He has.
And he's cute, and that's why you like him.
Old lady Harry Winks.
He's never been okay. Like his best place for Tottenham, like in the Spurs documentary on Amazon, is in an old people's home, talking to old ladies who can help them a little bit.
Harry
Winks.
Oh, okay.
He has no place in the team at all. I feel bad for him because he loves the club. He clearly loves the club, and he's a nice kid. But he's not. I mean, he is a professional footballer, clearly, but he's not a professional footballer, not at our level.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
I think he'd be funny enough, Southampton and Everton or someone like that, like mid-table.
I mean, I guess we're not going to be top four regularly with him, but I like him. Skip's going to be a great player. I mean, I watched a lot of Norwich City last year for no other reason than Skip was playing. So, putting on my my Fire Stick and watching Norwich in the Championship, and he was head and shoulders above what was out there. Going to be a great player. Funnily enough, I'd tomorrow night I'd actually like to see Winks and Skip start alongside each other. I know people don't like Winks, but it's not the strongest of opposition. I also think they'll have a bit more dynamism than Højbjerg. I think with the lack of creativity, neither Skip nor Højbjerg have a lot of dynamism, and I think Winks and Skip, I can see one holding, one going forward, particularly if the wing backs. I mean, I presume he's going to play Doherty and Sessegnon tomorrow, with the wing backs getting a lot further forward as well. But I may be on to another subject, Shan, because I suspect you want to talk about tomorrow.
We will come on to that. I've just got a couple more from Steve. How much can we spend, Steve?
Good question. Great question. I should have written it myself. So here's one I prepared earlier. So, I mean, who knows at the end of the day, but let's make some assumptions here. 500 million revenue. We're operating at the moment 37% margin. That will probably go up a little bit. So our costs aren't going to go up that much for the events because they tend to be quite high margin. We've had some more sponsorship deals come in, which are also, pretty much 100% margin. Then take off 35 million interest, 20 million tax, around 100 to 150 million is what I think we could spend each year. Bearing in mind, just remember back to the beginning of the pod, the 170 million quid that we currently owe other clubs. So, one year you may spend 50 million, one year you may spend, can I say it, 200 million. So kind of, you have to look at it over time a bit. 100, 150 million sounds an awful lot, but I'm backing myself here because if we look at the spend when we're in the stadium, but pre-COVID, we were spending, 80 to 100 million pound. We were spending it terribly, as we've said, on, a 100 million pound midfield of GLC and Ndombele, which I'm hoping they both will work out, but neither of them have. But we were spending, so I think we could afford to spend between 100 and 150, which would absolutely bang on put us in the competition for major honours.
And that presumably, Steve, would be net because there will undoubtedly be player sales.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I'm absolutely certain that Conte will take a fair number of this squad out that he doesn't consider good enough.
Well, you could stick with Paratici, couldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've not been.
I'm
talking about Conte, but I think Conte will ultimately make the final decision as to who he sees as being, longer term. But I would expect the two of them between them to have had, despite the fact they say the opposite, I've had some fairly lengthy discussions about who they think can make it, who they think can't. Maybe moving on player 60 million for Delhi to Newcastle in our dreams, I fear. But maybe they'll be maybe Newcastle will be desperate because
100 million for Harry Winks.
Yeah,
if there's any Harry,
I'd take that.
Million, it's Harry Winks.
I'd take that. I got a soft spot for Harry Winks, but there you go. I know I'm in a minority, but then he's homegrown and he does. As Steve says, he loves the club.
To be fair, I'm homegrown and I love the club, but doesn't mean I should be starting midfield for Spurs.
Yeah.
Actually, HG's not homegrown, is he? So he can play for us.
HG's homegrown. In Harlow.
Yeah, but he's trained overseas, isn't he? So not homegrown.
Yeah, not until he was 20.
To be fair, I don't know HG's life history well enough to properly comment on this.
God, Steve, have you had a bad day going through Twitter today or something with this next one?
I have.
But Steve, we could spend lots more if Enoch invested in us as other owners do.
We could. And this is partly put in tongue in cheek to prove that, the cheese room in some circles is considered ridiculously pro-Enoch. Perfectly, I think we give a fairly balanced view on that. Of course, if Enoch invested more money in us, we could spend more money on players. And the one table that Swiss Ramble put out today, which has exploded all over Twitter, and of course everybody's ignored everything else he said, is that owner investment over 10 years. Then if you look at the bottom of it, it says including loans. So Man United is a really good example. Man United, their owners have invested, what was it, 300 million? Awesome. If Enoch did that just a season, we'd win the league next year. Probably win Champions League a year after. It's not in 1 year, it's over 10. So, it averages out to 30 million a season. Also, they then take dividends. So they're drawing 10 to 25 million a year in dividends. So all of a sudden, that 300 million investment doesn't seem so great. Particularly because they've also got, 35 million quid a year of interest as well, which, as you said earlier, was taken out by the owners to buy the club based on the club's assets secured against them. So actually, when you look at it net, they're taking more out of the club than they're putting in. But to be very fair, we're always fair on this show, apart from against Harry Winks. Villa's owners have invested in the club. They've invested via equity, so no debt, no interest, and they don't take dividends. So it can be done. Absolutely can be done. I mean, would we rather be Villa? I don't think so. So, long story short, ENIC don't give us anything. So they're not giving us, but they're also not taking with the other hand either. And it's really important to look at both sides of it. Because, Shan, I could give you 20 quid tonight, but if I take 50 quid from you tomorrow, then I'm just the asshole in the situation, right? And you're down.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that, Steve, because you're the best.
I wouldn't do that. I don't normally carry cash either, so probably couldn't give you 20 quid.
You could bank transfer it, to be fair.
I could, but I won't. I'll buy you a drink at McDonald Club.
Which is free, thanks.
Yep. Good. Well, one rule of economics 101 is goods that are free at the point of consumption are overconsumed. I can definitely confirm that alcohol is overconsumed down there.
Definitely. I want to talk a little bit about the game tomorrow because obviously I'm conscious that we are playing Mura away in Maribor, not at Mura, at Maribor, which I think we've been to before quite recently in the Europa League. Ian, how do you think we're going to line up tomorrow?
I think he'll want to win the game. So
we've got to win the game, haven't we?
I'm more worried about how we're going to look in attack. I think I suspect he'll start with Galini in goal. I think, as I said before, I think the wing backs will be Doherty and Sessegnon. I think that should be a given, particularly when Sess came on. He actually looked quite good for that 15 minutes. I think someone said earlier, I'd like to see Sess get a run. He was, when we signed him, we were all excited, and he's had injuries and what have you. So if he gets a run, he's going to be a great player. I'll be interested. I think he'll play Sanchez. I think that's one he'll definitely play. Whether he gives Tanganga another go. Will he play Davis? Will he play Roden? I'm interested in the Roden situation because it doesn't seem now from. He was signed under Mourinho, wasn't he? Mourinho didn't play him much. Ryan Mason didn't play him much. Nuno hasn't played him much.
Played his mates.
Ryan Mason. Well, yeah, okay, but I'm not going for that because and Conte's not played him much. So much as when you watch him in a Welsh shirt, he looks good, and when I've seen him in a Spurs shirt, he hasn't done much wrong. There's clearly something not right. So anyway, I suspect he's going to go with something like Sanchez, Tanganga, Davis or Dyer, maybe Dyer. I think he might stick with Dyer. Dyer seems to like playing games, and he does need leadership out there. I'm gonna stick my neck out and go Winks and Skip. I think Skip will inevitably play because he didn't play at the weekend, and therein lies the problem. Is he going to give Gill a game, and in place of what in front of Mura? Son, I think, looks like he needs a rest. I mean, everybody's focused on Harry Kane, not surprisingly, because he's English, because he's our talisman, because he's the one that's seriously out of form. But Son's not been in great form for Tottenham either. I mean, it's sort of gone a little bit under the radar. Does he play them to try and get them into goal-scoring form, or do they need a rest? And if he wants to rest them, who does he play in their place? Mura is one of those ones that looks like he could, looks like he could run and run and run all day. But again, is he another one that needs a rest? And I'm not sure how he'll go at the front. As someone says, I'd like to see Gill again. I would like to see Gill play again, and I agree with King Hoddle. The Viking needs a rest, which is why I've gone for Winks and Skip in the midfield, with the two holding players. maybe you'll give Kane a game like we did against Albania and San Marino to try and give him some chances to hit the target and get some goals. He's one who seems to like to play every game. Maybe Gil, Mura, and Kane up top. But I'm guessing that's something like that anyway.
I think they'll all travel, won't they? If we need to bring Son on, and if Kane don't start, but I think he will, then they'll both be on the bench. And if we're not doing quite how we need to be, I'm sure they'd be brought on at half time. Still 5 subs, isn't it? So
yeah.
So yeah, Stevie, what do you think?
I mean, I think mostly what Ian said, to be fair. So I won't repeat it kind of verbatim, but I think 100% Conte is not going to do what Nuno did. And I think it's actually one of the reasons that ended him up getting sacked in creating this Tottenham A team, Tottenham B teams that just
Totally
destroyed
right.
players' confidence. So Conte is not going to do that. I think Conte is also going to be aware that we have a realistic chance of winning the competition, and the club need a win. You know, as fans, we desperately need some silverware. And yeah, we're going to get mocked that it's, you know, the Europa Conference League and nobody gives a shit about it. I give a shit about it. So something in our trophy cabinet. And once you won something, it is then, okay, bit of a cliche, but once you've won something, it's easier to go on and win other things. Plus it guarantees us Europa for next year, which Touchwood will get. Again, touching wood, Kerr, I'm doing that a lot tonight. Touchwood, we get that from league position anyway, if not Champions League, which is an outside chance. So I think he will rotate. I don't think he'll rotate fully. I think, yeah, definitely the wing backs, you know, Doherty and Sessegnon, I think will play. Midfield.
That was confirmed. Sess and Brian
Was
are
it
both
confirmed?
playing. Both of them are playing, yes.
That's good. Up front's a bit more challenging just because we don't really have anybody to replace Kane. And I think as good as it is to play our youth, and we have, you know, a couple, you know, Mark Andy and Scarlett, who both look good up front and they're very talented. My only fear is if we continue playing them and they're not getting a service, as I said, we've got no creativity. You know, when they have played, or when Scarlett's played at least, he hasn't done much because he doesn't get the bloody ball. So my only slight fear is if we play a very junior, young set of attackers, then it could damage their confidence if they're not being given the ball and they're not getting getting a service. So I think out of our crew up front, we'll need at least one kind of first team regular, whoever that is, and then hopefully a couple of kids. So probably Hill will play, and I love that kid. Like he looks awesome. And then, do we want to risk Kane? Probably not. So maybe Son to try and get some form back, because you're right, Ian, he has been under it. And then you know, Scarlett up front. Assuming Scarlett's travelled. Oh, is he injured? Probably not Scarlett up front. Let's go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gav, I don't know. Where did the saying touching wood come from?
That's one for Google, isn't it?
I was just going to pick up my phone and find out.
Yeah. No,
I can do it if you want. You might ask me a question and I won't be answering it because I'm Googling. Not very professional.
I think Kane will start, and if we get a couple of goals, he'll come off at half time or shortly after. Yeah, I think Son. Do you think Kane doesn't use as much energy as Sonny does? I think Sonny is just fully burnt out. He carried the team for the first 3 games this year.
Yeah.
And then he carries the South Korean team as well when he's on international duty.
Yeah.
And he's had a couple of injuries. So I think he needs rest. Kane hasn't done anything all season. He only really turned up against Leeds. So I don't think he needs the rest quite as much as Sonny does. So yeah, I think we'll see Kane up top, get the job done in the first half, bring on Markandé, see what he can do. But that boy is talented. I've been raving about him for a while now. He is going to be something really, really special. So hopefully see him get the chance. I think it will be Hill and Lucas that play in the other two forward roles. Winks and Skip in midfield. And you're going to see Cess and Doherty. The back three will be, I think Rodon will play. I think Rodon, Sanchez, and Tanganga, I think.
It's a bit inexperienced, that, isn't it? That's my worry about that three.
I don't know if he'll play Dyer again, though. I think it'll either be Dyer or Tanganga.
I mean, it is an experience, but you've got, okay, for Wales, but yeah, you've got a tried and trusted international defender in Rodon.
Same with Sanchez.
And Sanchez, yeah, he's either Bambi on ice or he's a really good defender, depending on which Sanchez turns up. So I think, I mean, realistically, we're playing Mura, right? We should have enough quality and depth in our squad to see him off, whoever really plays.
I think if you've got Skippy in front of them as well, he is just like a man shield. So yeah. Oh, Kerry is here. It's a pagan belief that malevolent spirits inhabited wood. Knock on wood prevented the spirits from hearing and preventing your hopes from coming true. Interesting.
That's why I love a cheese room. We get, it's not just us kind of leading this podcast. We also get insight from the room as well.
It might be interesting tomorrow in terms of Conte's thinking for the January window if certain players don't play. I mean, for example, if he doesn't play Rodon at all, if he doesn't play Sanchez at all, that might give an impression of who might be out the door in January, or they'll be trying to raise money for further transfers in.
This is the thing. I think the whole squad will travel. It won't be like what Nuno did, where he leaves everyone at home. With 5 subs, he will make. Well, they've already travelled, haven't we? We know who's travelled. With 5 subs, he'll make a number of subs. He will. So I think we could see Ndombele play, maybe ahead of Winks.
I forgot about Ndombele. What about Ndombele instead of Lucas further forward, where he can actually hurt teams?
What, and play more of a 3-4-1-2? Funny enough, the 3-4-1-2 I think might actually suit us rather than the orthodox 3-4-3. It sort of means Ndombele's not going to do the work. Ndombele's not going to do the hard running that you need. But if he's able I would still have the 2 holders. I would still have, particularly if you're going to allow your wing backs, as Conte likes his wing backs to really bomb forward, and even one of his wide central defenders. Then I think if you're going to play that system, you need 2 holding players in case you lose the ball badly, and you've got a transition in front of you. But if you had wing, say, I think someone said, and I think. Oh God, yeah, Well, that's another thing. I forgot about Delhi again. And that's a terrible thing, isn't it? I've just completely forgot about Delhi. So we could see Delhi and Kane up top.
Yes,
with Ndombele in behind.
Yes, you could. I forgot about Delhi. But it just shows no one else has commented on, what about Delhi? Fancy, because I think a lot of people have given up on Delhi, and it's a real shame. It's a real shame.
I think we will see everyone under Conte, though. I think he wants to see. He said it in his press conference. He wants to. There will be rotation. He wants to see what the other players have got about them. He wants to see how they perform, what they bring, how they fight.
Yeah.
Can they force their way into his 11? Because his 11, I don't think he knows his best 11 yet. I think if a player turns up, they could force their way into it.
I couldn't agree with that more.
That's kind of what the club said in the statement,
Thanks,
wasn't
Kerry.
it?
Yeah. It'd
What-
be interesting.
What do we think the score will be?
I'd like to think we'll win a couple nil, something like that. We should be better than that, but I'll take that. I'll take any win. I think at this stage, with where we've been, any win will do.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've now got Joseph in the Technicolor dream coat. Any dream will do.
Your
Been
singing's
years
as good
since
as
I saw
mine.
that.
Yeah, as Kerry said, we do have a lot of decent players. Really, they've just lost their way a bit. I'm inclined to think. I'm inclined to agree with that. I mean, the Twitter, the cesspit of Twitter. This one's shit. That one's shit. Everybody's shit. No one can play. There's a number of decent players out there. And it's a matter of seeing, but I think one of the great places we're in is that I'm pretty sure that there'll be no one that disagrees with this, that if Conte can't get them playing, then it's not the coaching staff, it's the player, and the player needs to be shipped out, because we've gone through this with too many coaches over the last, since Poch left. The player has to deliver. If the player doesn't deliver, the player will be shipped out. And it's that simple.
There's no more player power, is there, with Conte and Paratici at the helm?
Not a cat in hell's chance. No.
Steve, what do you think?
So I mean, I think we're going to win fairly comfortably. I mean, the home game when I watched them.
Oh, here we
Hotspur
go.
Stadium, just next to Ozzy and Gary and
as you do
in the director's box, as you do. They
got a selfie with Daniel Levy.
Of course, they were shit. Yeah, they're not a good footballing side. They've got a couple of decent players. I can't remember their names. They've got a couple of decent players. HG, I know, but they're not a good team, and we should see them off, particularly with Conte as manager and getting a team going. So I think they will score. I saw somebody said 3-1 in the chat, and saw somebody else said 3-0. I think it'll be 3-goal difference, and I think we'll win 4-1. But I am expecting anybody else who went to the game and heard their 9 supporters on the ground, they were quite loud. They were up for it, and I know because they're kind of big day out. But I think there should be a reasonable atmosphere. So we just need to be a bit careful that we don't kind of back foot early on. But I think with Conte doing his windmilling and whatever else he does on the sideline, screaming out, I think even if we do, he should get us going again. But yeah, 4-1 is my bet.
I think Conte might use this to try out some different tactics as well and see how that pans out. He might use it to sort of tinker, almost like a training match. I don't want to be disrespectful to Mura, but if he's going to do it at any time, it'll be against Mura. Do you know what I mean? We beat him, what was it, 5-1 at home?
Was it 5? What was it? Was it 5-1? 5-1?
Harry Kane got a hat-trick within 20 minutes.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, one of the only things I'm saying, it goes back to the sort of 4-2, whatever it was, 4-3-1-2 or whatever, is that Conte does have a tendency to find players to fit his system. He doesn't fit his system to fit the players. That's been his way. So I'm not sure how much we'll see tomorrow, but I'm not sure how much tactical compromise he'll make for the players. He'll expect the players to play the way he wants to play within his system.
It's interesting you say that, because I saw a tweet a couple of days ago, and they'd listed out how many times he'd used a different oh god, I can't think the word now.
Formation.
That's it. Different formation for both Inter Milan and Chelsea, and he'd used six or seven different formations.
Okay.
So he will change it up. Like, it's the famous one with Chelsea where they were losing 3-0 at half time against that lot
Arsenal.
down the road.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Um,
swore on your show.
You did. It's PG show this is. And he
Not an
he
HG
chose
show.
it to free at the back and didn't look back. So
No.
he's one of those. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and he has to almost until January at least. He has to play a system that suits the players we've got. And I have seen a few rumours that will say the aim is to get to a 3-4-1-2 because it suits who we've got better. But obviously in January that could change. In the summer, I'm sure it will change.
No,
if he makes it that far.
It better change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
if you're looking at that one, assuming you're talking about Son and Kane as being the shoe-ins up front,
yeah.
You've got Gill, you've got Bergwijn, you've got Dele, you've got Ndombele, you've got Lo Celso, and I've probably forgotten someone to play in that one role. We've got 5 players you could pick from. Can anybody say, oh, that one's a shoe-in, or that one's definitely good enough? That's where we're at, I think. We should have somebody that's absolutely a shoe-in in that position. And we've got several players that possibly aren't good enough and need to be moved on.
Well, I've seen it a few times. Gov here, Conte said as coach is a tailor, you fit the system to the players that you've got. But I could see Bergwijn being a really good right wing back. He's defensively decent. He's got pace. He can cross the ball.
Yeah.
He's an absolute unit.
He's got a goal in him.
Occasionally.
Well, he scored a really good goal for the Netherlands.
Holland. Yeah. Just wonder how much the season might have changed if he'd have got one of those two at Liverpool last year. But hey. Yeah, maybe. I've seen that from a number of people that think he could be good there. I mean, certainly, I just don't see Doherty having a future at the club at all. It's one of those I can't see what he brings at all. So, I mean, if Doherty was to leave and Bergwijn were to stay in that role, and particularly he would be versatile because he could play further up. Like I said, maybe he'll try that tomorrow. That would be interesting because a lot of people have suggested it.
Well, Bergwijn isn't there, is he?
Yeah, Bergwijn and not Doherty at right wing back. I've just assumed he'd play Doherty, but
yeah, Bergwijn's not travelled.
Oh, of course. Sorry. Yeah.
That's we might see it
at my age. I can't remember what you said half an hour ago, but yeah, you're right. He didn't travel, so he's ill. Somebody said he's ill, so if he's ill, then that's not going to happen.
We could see it against Red at home, though, so you never know. Although I think we'll go strong for that game because we really need to top this group because we do not need an extra 2 matches in a playoff.
Oh, is it an extra 2? God Almighty! Yeah, okay.
Yeah, home and away.
Yeah, no, I didn't realise that.
See,
I thought if you came second, you ended up with a UEFA Cup, Europa League team come down and play you. Okay,
you do. So,
but in a playoff.
So you do a home leg and an away leg, and I think they get I think they play the home leg in the last leg in the second leg. So they have the slight advantage. Not that it really makes any difference.
And no wonder the big clubs want a Super League rather than this crap that UEFA keeps serving up.
Yeah.
I mean, selfish me would say I want to finish second because we get home games included. So it's another game for me to go to the club I love and watch us play. But I would willingly sacrifice another game free of charge to not have a squad go through the rigor of another football match, particularly when would the playoff be? Because we've got
February. Oh, it's just before the FA Cup third round, I think, or around the same time as that.
We've got so many games December and January already.
Yeah, without being presumptuous, when is the League Cup final? Because I think that March, because that's one I think that we'll have a look at with Conte will be eyeing and saying we've got a home quarter final,
which I'm going to.
Well, good on you, but
Steamy, you go.
that's one. You got a home
I'm going.
quarter final. You got a home quarter final. Yeah, then is it a 2-leg semi? I mean, I do
Yeah, it
absolutely
is.
lose track of it.
This season it is 2-leg semi.
Yeah, that's something else. Another reason, too much football, too much of the wrong football.
Well, I can't not go to the West Ham games. I got absolutely crucified on Twitter because I spent the weekend at the Qatar F1, which apparently makes me not a Tottenham fan. So I didn't go to one home game. So I don't think I could miss 2.
Yeah, Caller got slaughtered, to be fair, for spending Christmas with his family. So rather than going to the Palace game. So.
Yeah, but that was some Caller's own family who did a slaughtering for that.
And those on Twitter too. But I got slaughtered for staying here at the weekend to decorate my father-in-law's lounge, as if I don't work all week and have any other time to do it. But yeah, no.
To be fair, he is a gooner, isn't he?
What, my father-in-law? He just no, he's not football. He doesn't really do football at all. He don't follow it.
I thought he was a gooner.
No, my dad's a gooner.
Ah, that's it.
Yeah, my dad's a gooner. My father-in-law isn't. So, in
Somebody
fact,
else.
the whole house hopes Spurs win because I get in a foul mood. Steve knows how angry I get when we lose, especially when I've been at the game. He actually cushioned the Chelsea blow more than it probably would have been because I did get to meet Gary Mabbott because of Steve. But if that didn't happen, I'd have been driving back down the A12 very upset.
Yeah, that wasn't a good. That wasn't a good game, was that?
The Chelsea game, no. And it all unfolded in front of my eyes in the North Stand as well. That was pain. It was very painful. The United game was... Yes.
Best 3-0 defeat in history.
Yeah, in hindsight...
Conte would already be the Man United manager if we'd have won that game 3-0.
Yeah, but in hindsight, it was very good. But on my train home, and as I left the stadium when we went 2-0 down, it didn't feel that way.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. But I mean, anyone that wasn't angry at that probably isn't watching a podcast like this because you don't spend 2 hours listening to a couple of old men droning on about accounts and football unless you're absolutely committed to the game.
Exactly that.
And the club.
We should probably end on a really positive note, shouldn't we? Because if we think about it, what do we have as a club right now? We've got a really well set up club financially.
Don't big them up too much because you'll get abused.
I will.
That's how this works.
I will. We also have Conte. We have a very good manager. We have Paratici, who's saying all the right things, and his recruitment over summer was pretty decent. Romero looks solid if injured. Hill, looks cute as a little button, bless him. And he looks like a good player. Royale, I think he's very good. Galini.
Not
decent.
sure about Galini.
I
think Galini's decent.
I want to see
Not
him
amazing.
with a proper defence.
But I think he's decent. So I think we're really well set up. And I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
And yep, Jay-Z absolutely can buy pies in the stadium. It's also exciting. Are they still doing was it £5 pie and a pint kind of early
Something
access
like
thing?
Yeah.
So no one game.
Yeah. I think you can. I seem to remember the last time I went, I had that. But the food in the stadium is really pretty decent, and the beer is not stupid money either. I mean, what was it for? A decent pint for £4.50. That's not bad in captive audience in London.
It's not.
Steve wouldn't know. He has lobster and venison on match days.
Actually, I don't think I've done venison.
Yeah.
The club say they can't afford venison because it's a little deer.
Yeah. A little deer. Yeah. Okay.
I'm shortly away.
Yeah.
But you're right, Ian. The food quality, the price, and the price of the pints was a very deliberate ploy by the club. So they actually surveyed all of the pubs in a mile radius to get an idea of the pricing and made sure they were competitive against them. Because not just for money purposes, but part of the planning permission was trying to get people in early and leave later, because public transport around us is terrible.
It's so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I live in Scotland, so I don't get to anywhere near as many games as I'd like. Albeit, I will be down for the Brentford and Norwich games next week.
Awesome.
And you know, having been at the old White Hart Lane in the 70s and what have you, you know, where you queued up for ages to try on, you know, stale pie and a cup of tea if you were lucky enough to get one. And I was absolutely gobsmacked, not only the quality of the stadium, but the whole match day experience feel of it, of being able to be there, you know, an hour odd before the game. And not because you had to queue for the boys' enclosure around the back of Worcester Avenue in the hope of getting in on time, but because you could have a leisurely pie and pint or whatever, catch up with some friends, and then, as I've done, stay after the game again, have another beer, and get instead of getting the 5 o'clock train, getting the 6 o'clock train, and it's a completely different feel to the stadium. And what was just something that's reminded me, when they played, I think, the first NFL game, they ran out of beer in the third quarter.
Yep.
Now, that wouldn't have gone unnoticed. Not only the fact that they ran out of beer, because I would imagine they got a pretty big supply, but the fact is, it shows you with a stop-start game, with them, like, you know, with the timeouts and the game in quarters, then half time, and the game an hour's game lasting 3 hours. The opportunities to sell food and drink and an event like that is absolutely enormous. And I actually really enjoy going to the stadium now and just spending some time there, rather than, you know, getting there at 10:02, going into your seat, trying to get a halftime pie, leaving at 10:02 and running back to the car for sports report and stuff like that. Change days.
100%. And yeah, at the end of the day, apart from watching a team, the thing I love most is, you know, talking to my mates from stadium who are other Spurs fans, and kind of chilling out with them, having a drink with them, and that's all part of it. I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and then we'll probably look to wrap this up. I don't know if it's J's or JI's. Apologies, my friend. Are we still brewing our own? Yep, still brewing. Only the Beavertown stuff, not any of the other. I think they can brew up to about 1 million pints a year, which tackles most of it. And Harry, is there actually a cheese room
in the Tunnel Club? Yes.
I mean, yes, there is, but there's no official cheese room, sadly. They do serve cheese in the stadium, but there's nowhere to put our cheese. But there is a wine cellar in the stadium, but no cheese room.
No. Well, you said we were going to end on a positive note, and you've just completely killed Harry's vibe there.
Oh, what can I say that's more positive? Christmas is coming, and in December we get the chance to watch a club we love managed by Conte every few days. And after the international break, you know what? I can't bloody wait for that. I hate the international break, mainly because all our players get injured, or like Harry Kane, play really well for England and then shit for us. But you know, can't wait for us to be back playing. I know at Leeds weekend, we've got Mura tomorrow, but I can't wait for us to be playing every few days.
Yeah, definitely. And I will be back at the stadium for Red Scouse at home. And then again for West Ham, and then again for Palace. So yeah, we've got hopefully an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be Spurs, isn't it?
Hell yeah.
So yeah. On that note, thank you everyone for joining us. Ian, for your debut. It's been great to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed your time at the cheese room.
Loved it. Honest.
Thank you for your time and effort in the run sheet, giving me all my questions.
Yeah.
No worries.
As well. Your knowledge is greatly appreciated, and I'm sure it's been beneficial to everyone that's been watching. So thank you.
I hope so, and thanks to everybody in the chat. Your questions keep us going.
Absolutely.
So the more you guys ask, hopefully the better the pod is. Yeah, it's been fun for 2.5 hours. That's whizzed by.
I know, that's a long time. Steve's voice notoriously sends me to sleep, so
You are looking quite
ready for
drowsy,
bed
so we should
now.
let you get to bed.
And everyone in the comments, thank you again for joining us. And until tomorrow, well, Friday, obviously we're back Friday for the who are we playing this weekend?
Burnley, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Is
there
it
we
Burnley
go.
away?
Burnley away.
2 o'clock on Sunday.
Back Friday for the preview for Burnley away. But until then, come on, you Spurs.
Oh, that was a lame. Come on, enthusiasm, Shan.
Come on, you Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.